Game Beard.
Hi friends, it's time for another painting video where we take Kerensky's Orion from the Star League Command Lance, and we're gonna repaint that pre-paint. Here you can see this is the pre-painted Orion, and it's okay. I definitely like the AK and the 01 decals on the thighs, and it's okay if you don't paint your mechs, but it's pretty basic, and I knew that I wanted to add more detail and make it look a lot better. I knew I could, and I know you can too, so by some simple steps we could make this thing look a lot better. Now I'm going to use this stuff on the base. It's a texture paint, and I didn't have time to tell you the specific kind, but you can just read the label. And I just slather this on the base. And this stuff works really good. It gives you a nice texture, and it doesn't, you can paint it, and it's great. And it looks really authentic. But I use two different kinds of this texture paint. I think this is ceramic stucco. I use ceramic stucco and resin sand, and I believe resin sand is the thicker stuff. We'll find out soon because I'm gonna trowel it out here. But I really like this stuff. It's pretty versatile, and you can stick like a couple extra small little rocks in there if you want to. Sometimes they fall out, but you can. This is it becomes like a glue, so you can kind of like put little bits of cork or little bits of pebbles in there, and it looks pretty good. But I don't always do that at the Battletech scale. Battletech scale, this gravel needs to be smaller, and it kind of represents grass and little rocks themselves like gravel. Once I kind of slather this stuff on, I'm gonna like kind of wipe the edges of the base. You can kind of see it's kind of hanging off the base, and I just wipe it off with my finger. If you do a lot of these at once, like 10 or 20 of them, sometimes you want to dip your finger in water, and then so it's a little wet, and then you can just wipe that stuff off pretty good. But this looks not bad, and this will dry mostly clear, but then you can paint it, of course, right? So there it is, and then I'm gonna put on the thicker stuff. So here's the thicker stuff, resin sand. So this is Liquitex. And this stuff is good. This is a little older, so it's not as smooth, but I'm going to slather this on. Now I don't completely cover the base with this. I just do this in little like parts. So this will be kind of like the rough parts. So that thinner ceramic stucco underneath is kind of like the grass and the dirt, and this is like the thicker, whether it be thick grass or gravel or just sand, I don't know. But by using both these textures, it really creates a nice look. You don't want to use just one. I would get both. Especially for a mech like this really big. Like for like a Space Marine, yeah, you might get by with just the resin sand, right? But for mechs, it's supposed to be really kind of delicate ground because it's supposed to be so small. So eventually this will, yeah, there it goes, focusing in, and you can kind of see it has a nice texture. And then I'll paint it later. But I really enjoy this stuff. Okay, so here is another Orion that I have, and here you can see it's kind of painted. When it focuses, when I paint this stuff, I use watered down paint. So like watered down, kind of like a brown, and then I add little drips of green in there, and it kind of blends in with the brown, so it gives me kind of a nice woodland or just grassy look. But that was a different mech, just to show you how the end might look. Here I'm going to start dry brushing a lighter, like a highlight, onto this mech, and I'm going to do this before I paint this guy. I'm going to very lightly dry brush this. Now when I dry, this is like a cream color. It's not a pure white. It's like a cream. In fact, it's Privateer Press Menoth Highlight. It's like my favorite go-to. I kind of use it for everything. Why? Because it's not a pure white. It kind of mixes in with like warmer colors, and it looks good. It kind of mixes in with everything. Now, when I do this, I'm trying to be super careful, but whenever you dry brush something, it will wash out your model. And I know that. I think that's why a lot of people don't like to do this stuff, because it washes out your model. But later you'll see I'm gonna paint, I'm gonna fill in those colors back in, and I'm not gonna paint over the highlight, but I'm gonna kind of fill in all the excess lighter color that I'm kind of brushing on here. But man, my brush is really dry. Notice I'm using like a flat brush too. That's kind of all I got. I notice a lot of YouTube guys will use kind of these rounded brushes to dry brush, and I just don't have one. But I think that flat one works pretty good because it can kind of hit the edges only. I don't know, but I could be wrong, but I like it. It's good enough. So here you can see, look at that mold line. You can only see that mold line because the camera is like a microscope looking in at all this detail that you would normally never be able to see. So, but you can see it's definitely giving my mech like a worn look, and it definitely is painting those raised edges. It's just a little too much. It's washed out my mech. Here are my decals, my paper decals. You can get these from gamebeard.com. You download them for free. That'll be under, it's called the Legends file. You know, you just download it. Okay, now I'm actually going to, I'm using white glue to, and I'm using a toothpick to kind of put on some white glue, and then I'm going to use my paper decals. Now, I'm going to put on the Star League, you know, decal. I liked the original, you know, factory print that they did, but it was hard to see. It didn't have as much contrast. So I am going to use my decal after all. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily look that much better at the moment, and that green doesn't match, but I'll paint it and blend it in later. But my little decal has a little more white in it, and it just shows up a little better. Here you can see these little warning strips. I mean, these things are tiny. I have to use the tip of my X-Acto blade to kind of stick them on, right? To kind of poke them and stick them on. And that's the way. I have a paper decal video that you can watch, or you can just get it from here. But I cut them out with a little scissors, and then I use an X-Acto blade to poke them, right? And then I use the X-Acto blade to stick them on. And then of course I have to like press them down, but not bad so far. So that's the process. And here you can see I'm adjusting that number 1. Even though in the Legends book, there's not a lot of decals or not a lot of markings on the painting, probably because the painters don't want to paint all those markings. I don't blame them. So I added a lot of my own warning numbers and extra numbers and warning labels and things like that, just so there's more decals. Here you can see all the decals. So like I did a bunch of them, and you can get these on at GameBeard, right? I got like a decal page, and then I got like the Legends page, and you can just kind of put these wherever you like. Like here you can see I got like a Star League on the, you know, on the side of his leg. Like that's not in the original painting, but I just wanted another Star League, you know, badge. And I really like the 01 and the AK. So I kept those. They look good. And I do appreciate that with the pre-paint. So like some of their details are good. Oh, and then the little yellow stripes, I kept those. I didn't want to repaint those. They look okay. So I'm kind of painting on top of, oh, here you can see I added a Kerensksy, you know, just a little label. It's pretty tiny. But I did like, you know, I kept some of the paint. Like, yeah, I kept those yellow stripes. I kept some of those markings. And I'm just going to paint on top of this. Like, I'm kind of considering the paint job they did as a primer. Okay, here I'm going to use like a wash. And I'm going to, let's see, I believe this is to dirty up my, yeah, like my metals, and this is here, I'm going to tell you what it is. My favorite is, it's Privateer Press Muddy Wash. Now sometimes I take that muddy wash, it's kind of like it's not a pure black, it's like a brownish black, but it's a little more black than brown. And so sometimes I might add a little bit of brown wash inside, or maybe a teeny bit a brown paint, like an umber, like a dark umber. And that makes it a little more brown, so it's kind of like oil and stuff like that. But it's up to you. But Privateer Press is currently on the ropes. I think they got sold out to another company. But I believe there's another, I think it's I want to say War Cradle. I'm not sure. I think it is. But I think they're going to be releasing their paints. So if you like those paints or you just want to pick up that wash, Muddy Wash by Privateer Press, it's one of my favorites. I really like it. I like their stuff. There might be better washes out there, but it does the job for me, and it's a good price, you know. So, but if you have better paints, go for it, right? Those are just the ones I use. So you can see I'm kind of applying this stuff, and it looks okay. You know, this stuff looks better when it's like tiny. Again, this is like a microscope, and you're gonna see lots of crazy details that like I normally wouldn't even be able to see. It's pretty ridiculous. But I'm definitely kind of washing this stuff on. There'll be a process of kind of mucking up my mech, you know, and this is one of them. I'm trying to get in those cracks and in the metals, and I'm trying to make those metals look a little more, I don't know, worn or burnt or whatever. I know those barrels of those weapons don't burn like that, but it looks good. I like it. Okay, so here you can see I'm going to fill in. Now this is going to look pretty dang green, way too green it's going to look, but it's not that green in real life. It might be my lighting, but it is green. And looking under this microscope camera, that original like drab, it's almost like a green drab gray, it actually looks pretty good. So you're like, what are you doing painting that bright green? Well, it's pretty green in the book, so I'm kind of trying to match the book, and I wanted it to be kind of green. And a little bit of that gray is going to peek through, but I'm really going in there. You can notice that, so this is, I'm filling in, right? I'm not painting up to the edge, so that original dry brushing is at the edge, but then I'm filling back in the color. And this is like my favorite technique, because I hate to paint all those lines just by themselves. And I know a lot of people do it and they're pretty good at it, but I really dislike it. So I kind of dry brush, and then I kind of fill in like this, and then later I will add some highlights. Like I will paint along those edges just to highlight them and make them a little more prominent. But this cuts down a lot of that process. Here you can see I'm kind of painting in right into that decal too, because the decal olive drab doesn't match my paint. So I just kind of paint in. Now I try not to paint over the decal. It's like the number or the word, but you get in there and it looks pretty good. Oh gosh, here I go. Okay, I'm gonna highlight there. I'm adding some. Again, this is that Menoff highlight that's kind of my favorite, and I'm going in and I'm highlighting. And the problem is, it's really hard. Like this is a tiny little brush, and it still looks like my highlights. I mean, that is so tiny, but it looks like a giant blob on the camera. And so what I will do later is I'll put all these highlights on, like I kind of put them all on, and like maybe a third of them will be too blobby, like they'll be too big. So what I do is I go back in with the green and I tighten up my highlights. Like I'll go in and I'll paint, I'll thin those bright big white highlights. I'll thin them so that they're smaller or thinner. And it's a chore, I mean, but it ends up looking pretty good. Now, if this thing is like 1 inch tall, right? And if I put this, well, a little more than 1 inch, but if I put this on the table, you probably wouldn't think much of it. But I definitely want to go in and tighten up some of those highlights. So I'll do that later. Currently, I'm gonna add, so I have that bright green, and now I'm gonna kind of muck it up with a little bit of a darker green, just so it's not all even. And I'm kind of painting in, you know, I'm trying not to paint over my highlights, but if I do, like if I got a blobby highlight and I paint over it, good, you know, it makes it look a little more natural. But I'm gonna kind of paint over that so it looks like the paint is worn and imperfect. But this is part of the process. I mean, this is like, if I was really trying to do a better job, I might even have a couple different colors. Like this is kind of like a darker green drab. I might have like a brown, a brownish green, like more of like a neutral dark, and kind of paint that in too. And then maybe I'll have a little bit of like a light bluish green and kind of paint that here and there, so it's just more colorful. But I'm mainly sticking with this, and there'll be some kind of brown later, some brown stains and stuff like that. So I'm pretty good. I mean, I like this mech a lot, but I'm not I'm not super crazy about Kerensky's Orion. You know, I'd be more excited about other character mechs, and I might give them a little extra love with different colors and stuff like that. But this will still look good. It'll look great, like for my standards. Like I'll be happy with it. It'll look great. Now I'm still painting that stuff, and you can kind of see it's looks a little blotchy. It looks a little uneven here and there, but that's kind of the goal. I mean, it's a worn mech, and you know, it looks good. Sometimes I don't think I show you, oh, well here, yeah, I'm painting over that decal number a little bit, so it's kind of worn. I do that. Usually I do that with like a slightly watered down brown wash. Oh, here I am. I'm trying to tighten up those white highlights, and it's hard to show you, but yeah, I'm like painting right next to them to kind of thin out those. They look like blobs under this microscope, but in reality, they're not that bad. But I want to tighten them up as much as I can, so that they look like a highlight or chipped paint. You know, a mech like this probably wouldn't have highlights like that. Like this is more of like maybe a painterly effect, but it does look good, and it brings out those details. And even if it wouldn't highlight like that, it could be like worn paint, like a thin strip of worn paint along the edge. And so at least my brain looks at it and is kind of happy with the results. So, but yeah, I mean, technically this would just be like a perfectly painted, you know, you wouldn't see all those details are exaggerated, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's see, am I getting to my, nope, I'm still, okay, so I'm painting some brownish wash gunk. I'm kind of painting in those heat sinks and stuff like that, and or whatever vents or whatever those things are. I assume they're heat sinks. And you can kind of see this is like the big portion. Now I got my thin brush, and I'm just gonna go like right on the edge. I usually like to do it on those heat sinks or vents, and like I like to do drippy, like mud drip stain effects or oil. And then you can see I went over that decal. I like to lightly paint over some of my decals, like oil or mud is dripped over those decals. It kind of helps sell the fact that they're part of that miniature instead of just glued on in their paper. Here I like to go, yeah, I'm adding, it's subtle, but I'm painting in those browns. It's kind of, there we go, you can see it there. It's kind of like it would drip. You could imagine the rain or it was dripping from that crack. And here I'm doing it on the leg. I'm painting over that decal a little bit, not a ton. You don't want to do it too much, but just enough. This one might be too much, but just enough where it looks like the paint effect is on top of that paper, and it makes it merge more with that model. You can see I'm like wiping away a lot of stuff with my finger. It works pretty good. You might use a napkin, but sometimes it's easier just to quickly do it with your finger. Oh, I'm going to glue on the front label. So again, you can get these labels, you know, this is part of the decal little set. They're free, you know, you just download it from my site. And I just got the little Kerensky. Like, you don't have to do these, but they're kind of fun. And you can put this, I have, you know, Kerensky for the front, and then I have like the Orion label for the back hex. And you can use as much or as little of these as you like. You can also see I have those little tufts of grass. Sometimes I dry brush a little bit of lighter color on top of that, like a cream on top. I might have done it on those, but sometimes that helps blend it in. But here it is. This is my painted Kerensky's Orion, and I'm pretty happy with the results. A lot more love. So hopefully this helped you out, and hopefully you're encouraged to add some more detail to your pre-painted Kerensky. Anyways, have fun painting and adding details to your mech, and I will talk to you in the next video of of this series. Well, that's the video. I hope you found that overview useful to help you painting some of your characters and legendary mech warriors. I'm really enjoying painting all of these specialized mechs. I didn't think, I've painted some in the past, but looking at the Legends book, I'm really getting excited about painting like most of them, maybe all of them, but probably just my favorites. The problem is picking up some of those mechs, like extra Battle Masters. I would have to buy more games of Armored Combat, and I've already purchased a bunch of those, and I don't want to purchase any more, but we'll see. But I have painted a bunch of these mech warriors, and I think they're awesome. So if you like this kind of video, or you're just interested in Battletech, be sure to subscribe to Gamebeard. And don't forget, you can download all of the little paper decals that I used. You can download them from my website, gamebeard.com. You just search it. I have a Battletech section, and I've got a bunch of files you can just download, stuff that I've put together, including those decals. And you'll notice if you download those decals that I already have decals for the other Star League mechs. I have the Marauder and I have the Highlander. So I've already painted those, and those will probably be coming in a shorter video soon. So you'll be able to see my process in putting those together. But I had a lot of fun painting those, and I really look forward to painting the others. So we'll see if this happens. But make sure you subscribe, check out the channel. I'll also be talking about other games coming up, like Cthulhu Death May Die, and other skirmish games, and then of course like Conan, and of course my game, Junk Runner Skirmish. So you'll see some videos about that game. You can download that game as well at my website, so check it out. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.